The story begins with a group partying on a yacht when something strikes their boat. At first, they dismiss it, but the impacts grow stronger until the floorboards start breaking apart. A massive shark bursts through the center of the boat and hurls everyone overboard. As the group struggles to climb back aboard, the shark closes in, but Carter Blake manages to wound and capture it with a spear, saving the others. Following the incident, Dr. Susan McAllister is summoned by the directors of Chimera Pharmaceuticals. At her facility, Aquatica, she has been conducting experiments on sharks to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. However, corporate executive Russell Franklin believes the project has become too dangerous. To secure continued funding, Susan promises groundbreaking results that could dramatically boost their stocks within 48 hours. Russell accompanies her back to Aquatica, a remote, largely underwater station. There, marine biologist Janice Higgins greets him, and they witness Carter skillfully evading a shark while prying a license plate from its jaws. Though Russell praises him, Carter shows little interest in impressing a businessman. Janice explains that Russell's presence is no secret. He's clearly there to evaluate them. She then introduces him to 3 unusually large test sharks, bred for their experiments. Later, most of the staff depart for the weekend, leaving a skeleton crew behind. Elsewhere, Tom Scoggins criticizes Carter for using 2 shots to subdue the escaped shark instead of 1, so Carter counters that the pen wasn't secured properly, though Scoggins insists otherwise. Carter presses him about the pen's height, and Scoggins admits it is only 8 feet tall. Meanwhile, Janice tours Russell through Aquatica's submerged structure, living quarters on the first level, a water lab and workshops on the second, and engineering with wet entry access on the third. In her office, Susan debates with Dr. Jim Whitlock, who urges patience with their Gen 2 test subject, but she insists they move forward. In the airlock, Russell interviews Carter, who doesn't give any details and bluntly states that his work doesn't violate parole and he has no interest in changing the world unlike the scientists. Surprisingly, this honesty satisfies Russell. In the kitchen, cook Sherman Preacher Dudley verbally spars with his pet parrot while preparing food. Later, tower operator Brenda Kearns calls Susan to the surface. Expecting a meeting, Susan is surprised to find the area empty until some fireworks go off, revealing a surprise birthday celebration prepared by the crew. They spend the evening drinking and dancing. During the party, Carter reminds Susan of his earlier invitation to join him for a drink, but she declines in favor of focusing on her research. Meanwhile, Jim and Janice explain that they used hormonal enhancers to enlarge a female shark's forebrain, boosting protein yield capable of reactivating dormant human brain cells. Carter later shares his belief that the test sharks hunt in coordinated packs, making them even more dangerous. He argues that releasing the captured shark too soon was a mistake. Susan, however, emphasizes that if results are not achieved by tomorrow, everyone will lose their jobs. After she leaves, Scoggins reassures Carter that the fences have been raised. The next day, a storm approaches Aquatica. As Scoggins and Carter secure the facility, Carter is sent into a tunnel to recover a shark. He's confronted by 2 of them, but they retreat when he aims his gun. Astonished, Russell realizes they recognize the threat of the weapon. Soon, their cameras fail as the sharks deliberately disable them. Although isolated, Carter presses forward and enters the pen. He is attacked once more but manages to subdue the shark with his spear, and the unconscious predator is hauled into the lab for examination as the team monitors its vitals. After confirming the shark is sedated, Susan steps onto the platform and attaches a device to its head. The shark twitches, but she presses on, puncturing its skull and extracting the protein complex. The sample is mixed into cultured neurons from an Alzheimer's patient, and the team watches in awe as the cells reactivate. In celebration, Jim lights a cigarette and approaches the shark, but it suddenly awakens and bites off his arm. Carter quickly gets out of the platform as the shark thrashes and grabs a spear gun from a cabinet. But before he can fire, Susan releases the shark back into the water. As Janice works to stop Jim's bleeding, Brenda calls for a helicopter evacuation. The storm makes the landing difficult, but Carter heads out to guide it in. Jim is strapped to a stretcher and hooked to the helicopter's lift, but as the crew retreat into the facility, the winch jams. Jim falls back into the water and moments later, something pulls the stretcher and drags the helicopter down. The aircraft crashes into the facility and explodes upon impact, killing the pilots and Brenda. Inside, the team struggles to regain visuals on the monitors. Through a window, they spot a shark carrying Jim's stretcher in its mouth. The shark slams it against the glass, cracking it until the window bursts, flooding the lab. Carter is caught in the surge but manages to swim to safety. With his help, The others force a jammed door closed to stop more water from entering. Meanwhile, Preacher takes a drink in the kitchen before trying to call for help, but no one answers. With the stairwell submerged and the elevators disabled, the group realizes they're trapped on sublevel 2. The structure continues to shake, and Preacher takes it as a sign to stop drinking. Carter proposes moving through the lab to reach sublevel 3, where they can take the submarine to the surface. On sublevel 1, Preacher follows a strange noise only to be swept away by a wave of water. Elsewhere, as the group passes the lab, they hear pounding on a door. The barrier soon collapses, forcing them to sprint down the corridor and push into the maintenance hatch just as water surges in. Once safe, Russell challenges Carter, asking if he thinks a shark was behind the destruction. Carter suspects it was the Gen 2 sharks doing. Russell concludes the sharks are deliberately targeting them and demands answers. Susan reluctantly admits the sharks' brains were too small to produce enough protein, so she genetically engineered them to grow larger. This in turn made them more intelligent. She insists it was necessary to pursue a cure for degenerative brain diseases, but the others remain unconvinced. Meanwhile, Preacher searches for another way out when he sees a shark coming. The chef desperately swims for his life and narrowly escapes into the kitchen, where the shark passes by without noticing him. Back at sublevel 3, Scoggins reassures the group that the perimeter fences will hold the sharks in. But when they reach the airlock, they find the submarine destroyed. In the kitchen, Preacher arms himself with an axe and climbs onto a shelf above the water. His parrot lands on a nearby pot, only to be swallowed whole by the shark that suddenly emerges. The shelf collapses and dumps Preacher into the water, and he narrowly escapes into an oven and slams it shut just as the shark closes in. On sublevel 3, the trapped group debates on their next move. Tensions rise, and Janice lashes out at Susan for putting them in this situation. With few options left, Russell proposes they abandon the facility and swim for open water. In the kitchen, the shark activates the oven, filling it with gas. Preacher uses his axe to break into the upper compartment and climbs out. He leaps through the top door just as the shark wedges itself inside. Seizing the chance, he throws a lighter onto the shark, igniting the gas and blowing up the kitchen. The explosion rattles the levels below, where the others are preparing to dive. Russell is optimistic about their chances, but Scoggins remains doubtful. He suggests climbing the maintenance ladder instead, warning that if the surface airlock was destroyed by the blast, the resulting pressure loss could flood the entire facility. Susan insists they cannot risk losing Aquatica, but Scoggins refuses to gamble his life for her research anymore. Russell cuts them off, recounting a time when he and his crew once survived an avalanche in the Alps. He reveals that his crew escaped by sacrificing 2 of their members and urges everyone to stop arguing, work together, and focus on survival. As he gives his speech, a shark suddenly bursts from the pool behind him, biting into him and dragging him underwater. The team can only watch in horror as the water turns red with his blood. Shaken, Scoggins suggests waiting for rescue. To refocus him, Carter asks what would happen if massive amounts of water flooded the facility, and Scoggins grimly explains the support struts would collapse first, followed by the walls. Carter then asks if he wants to sit and wait for that to happen. Reluctantly, Scoggins agrees to move forward. The group opens the maintenance hatch, but the pressure destabilizes and water surges in. They rush inside but struggle in forcing the door shut. While the women climb the ladder first, the men hold the door until it finally seals and then scramble up behind them. Above, the elevator burns, showering them with fiery debris. With no other option, they press on, hoping to reach sublevel 1. When they hear pounding from below, Carter realizes another shark is trying to break through. He volunteers to open sublevel 2 and release the water there to buy time. The shark successfully breaks through the door, causing the water to rise rapidly. Carter makes it to the level, but as soon as he pries it open, the surge of water pushes him off. But he manages to cling to the ladder and narrowly dodge the shark. The flooding intensifies and the facility's struts snap apart. The ladder unlatches from the wall, and Janice falls into the water while the others manage to hang on. Carter dives after her but is too late. The shark gets to her first. Devastated, he climbs back to the survivors, who cling on to what remains of the ladder, with a sublevel 1 door just within reach. Suddenly, they hear pounding echoing from the other side, and to their shock, it's none other than Preacher. Preacher pulls them to safety, but they quickly discover the stairway to the surface is also flooded. Carter and Scoggins conclude that if they can activate the emergency generators, they can drain the stairwell. They head down to the flooded lab, while Susan and Preacher remain behind on sublevel 1. Waiting anxiously, Susan insists on retrieving her research data from her quarters, and Preacher rebukes her for prioritizing science after so much loss, but she argues the deaths would mean nothing if the data is lost. In the lab, Carter pushes through wreckage and dangling wires, only to come face to face with none other than Jim's corpse. The sight startles him, and he bursts to the surface to scream. Scoggins appears soon after, having followed him down. In Susan's room, Preacher records what he believes could be his final message. Unsure of what wisdom to leave behind, he settles on sharing his secret omelet recipe. At the same time, Carter and Scoggins reach the generators and manage to power them up. But their relief is short-lived. The shark arrives and seizes Scoggins, tearing him apart and destroying the control panels in the struggle. Carter swims to the door and barely manages to unlock it before the shark can reach him. Meanwhile, Susan enters her lab and carefully retrieves her research data from her locker. A shark fin looms behind her, but it turns out to be part of a model in the room. She pushes it aside, only to see another fin heading straight towards her. The real shark lunges, forcing Susan to climb onto a shelf, but the data slips from her hand. She tries to retrieve it, but the attempt nearly costs her her arm. Acting quickly, Susan pulls cables from the room's power box, and standing on her scuba gear for insulation, she feeds the live wires into the water. The electricity surges through the room, killing the shark. But the research data is destroyed in the process. Susan reunites with Carter and Preacher, and the three head for the decompression chamber. With the stairway still flooded, their only option is to swim to the surface. As Carter arms himself with a fire extinguisher to distract the last shark, he opens the chamber valves, letting water rush in. As it fills, the three hold hands while Preacher leads them in prayer. Once full, Carter opens the shaft and pushes the others through. He releases the extinguisher to lure the shark away, giving the group a chance to surface. When they break through, the shark catches Preacher and drags him across the water. Susan and Carter swim clear as Preacher fights back and stabs the shark in the eye with his crucifix, forcing it to let him go. Carter rushes to save him and together they reach land. After tending to Preacher's wounds, Susan meets up with Carter. There, Carter notices that the facility has sunk further and deduces that the sharks have strategically been chasing them to intentionally sink the facility, thus lowering the fences and creating an escape route. Determined to stop the last one, Susan resolves to kill it. Carter loads gunpowder into a spear and instructs Susan to connect it to a car battery once he lands a hit, turning it into an explosive. As the shark rams against the fence with the intent on escaping, Carter readies himself to shoot. Just as he aims, the shark dives back underwater, exploiting a hole in the weakened fence to widen its escape route. Deciding to act as bait, Susan cuts her hand and dives in to draw its attention. The shark charges, but as Susan struggles to climb back to safety, the ladder gives way. Carter dives in to help, but the shark reaches her first and kills her. The shark then turns on Carter, who grabs onto its fin as it thrashes wildly in an effort to shake him off. Meanwhile, Preacher regains consciousness and spots Carter's spear, quickly figuring out his plan. He fires at the shark's fin, hitting it, but inadvertently injuring Carter's leg as well. Carter yells for Preacher to detonate the bomb. Though hesitant due to knowing it will kill him too, Preacher triggers the explosive as the shark escapes from the pen. Carter manages to hold on to the fence while the explosion obliterates the shark. Preacher smiles in relief upon seeing that Carter is alive, and the two men regroup. Soon after, the rest of the crew return from the weekend, and the movie ends with Carter and Preacher quitting their jobs. That is the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.